Hey, Becky. I wanted to ask you a few questions about facility and event management. That's our chapter this week. First, what are the skills that you believe it takes to handle a position like this in managing a facility of this magnitude and events that happen within it? Is there a certain skill set?
You have to be flexible somewhat, willing to work a lot of hours. So it takes someone who wants to or has the time to be here on the weekends, work evenings, things like that. I would say basic good communication skills, being able to listen to people's needs, establish relationships with people in the building, especially the maintenance people. You know, if you don't have good relationships with your maintenance people and your custodians, then you're, always a step behind in trying to do anything in the building. So I think basically communication, flexibility, you got to be organized, calendars are important meetings, scheduling, it all revolves around that. And I think you just have to be able to laugh a little at what goes on when things don't work out.
We talked a little bit before about this UNF arena and actually incorporating all of the athletic facilities on campus in terms of, are they public facilities? Are they private facilities? And, in our chapter we talk a lot about naming rights and the revenue stream that potentially could come there. Can you talk a little bit about our facilities in that way?
I think the university considers all of its facilities university facilities. I'm not sure of the legal nature of who owns what, but they are public in the sense that taxpayers' dollars and student fees and so on and so forth are what bills them. So there have been several lawsuits in the state regarding especially arenas that do not allow public use of those facilities. And the most recent that I can think of was down at Gulf Coast University. They were being sued because they were not, they turned a group down that wanted to rent the place, or they weren't giving enough access to the public for big gathering type events. And it was like a 5,000, 6,000 seat arena like this. And so the public or whoever in the community felt like they should be able to have access to that facility. So here on campus, we have a history of having public use and rental of our facilities for revenue purposes to the community. And so we haven't had that problem.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about, because this is a university facility and a shared use facility, not only the arena, but the Hodges Stadium, and I'm unsure about the baseball field and softball field. What is the management structure? How is that overseen, and how do we work together because of the shared use on the athletic facilities here on campus?
Okay. The arena and the stadium are the only ones I can really speak to, because I believe that baseball and softball they're totally controlled through athletics. I know they rent those facilities to high schools and whatnot. But that's, I don't know anything about that.
Sure.
But both the stadium and the arena had a usage policy established prior to their opening that had a structure of priority use in the facility that would dictate, for example, in the stadium, men's and women's soccer and track and field have priority on the schedule to first lay on their events and their practices. After that, the directive was to rent the facility as much as you can to generate a revenue base to be able to help pay for the upkeep of the building. Same thing in the arena. When we moved in the arena in '93, we started working on a usage policy in '92 that the president signed off on. It was revised last year, maybe 2 summers ago. It had input from student government, students at large, athletics, physical education, and the president's office, and all the muckety-mucks. And anyway, that policy is still sitting up in the president's office. So the structure comes from the top down to the units that have been selected to have a role in, in the management of the facility.
In terms of renting for upkeep, I don't know if you're privy to let me know, but are we breaking even? Are we covering the upkeep of these facilities with the rental? And if by chance we have a year where we get revenue beyond that, is that reinvested into the facilities, or where does that revenue go?
Yeah, the entire fund balance, the arena and the stadium are both an auxiliary operation, and they have auxiliary budgets that are overseen by the Auxiliary Oversight Committee. Okay? There are certain projects in the facilities themselves that we know that we have to budget for, like refinishing the floor in the arena. Or if a curtain breaks, or, for example, we had to replace all the curtains in the facility. The rent that's generated in this building is never going to be enough because of the small windows of time we have available to rent to cover the upkeep of all the heavy equipment in the building. But what is there, the fund balance, like let's say the fund balance is $80,000. If, for example, the floor needs to be totally taken down and refinished like we did 2 years ago, that project would go to our vice president, and between the vice president for student affairs and the athletic director, they would discuss who's going to pay for it and where's that money going to come from. Then, let's say they decided the arena auxiliary would pay for it, which it did. We would go to Auxiliary Oversight Committee and ask for permission to spend out of the fund balance. So every year in the arena, we spend out of the fund balance for maintenance on the curtains, maintenance on the goals, maintenance on the bleachers, especially the bleachers, and they all need to be replaced. And every other year, it's for resurfacing or light screen and coat the floor. In the stadium, we just refurbished the goalposts for football. We've bought rugby goalposts. We just replaced the concession stand front doors, which were all broken on the storefronts on the concession stand. We bought the 4-foot fence that's inside the stadium that blocks the track and the field off from the crowd. We put the big gates that close the vomitories off in the stadium. So, every year there's probably $10,000 to $20,000 worth of revenue that goes back into the stadium, and probably as much as $40,000 a year that goes back into the arena. Because the arena is a E&G facility, because it was built with PICO dollars, we get a certain amount of money from the university, from physical plant, for continuous maintenance upkeep, like painting and, not minor things, it's ongoing things. Replacing fan motors in the air conditioning system. All the custodial and maintenance is paid for with that.
Right.
We get a little bit of that in the stadium, but not as much because it's not a PICO facility.
Right.